Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Cash That. This is your host, Joe Dellera, and this episode is once again brought to you by our good friends at Rhythm. Rhythm is the #1 AI betting tool in the marketplace, and it's got so much for you. Now we even have Major League Baseball. I know a little bit about baseball. I grew up with baseball. Baseball was my favorite sport to play growing up because honestly, I was a little bit more of a hustle guy with basketball, for being real. And I loved baseball. And at the end of the day, a lot of us, we think we know baseball, but we don't know betting baseball. And Rhythm is going to help us out through this entire baseball season as the MLB models are now available. And you can test them out for yourself. Week trial right down here in the bio. Get yourself a trial of Rhythm and check it out so that way you can be better informed moving forward with this massive 162 game Major League Baseball regular season. And again, you can get that right down here in the bio from Rhythm for a week free trial. Additionally, we are running a sale at the Huddle right now. We're doing it basically $1 a game. We're doing for the entire Major League Baseball seasons. This is going to take you, it's a 7-month pass. It's going to take you from now through basically the end of October, or I guess now into November a little bit. And it is, instead of $210, $162. So you're getting quite the savings, and you can get all the picks from myself, Matty Chucks, Capper Penguin, and that guy Betts. The other thing is too, you guys know I like international ball. So this is going to take you through the end of the NBA regular season, all of the playoffs, the finals, and then we've got FIBA America. We have the WNBA this summer. You're going to get all of that, plus obviously the baseball plays, and you can get that for that discounted price. So highly recommend you sign up, and it'll take you right up to like the start of not only the NBA regular season again, but it's also going to take you through the beginning of the NFL season as well. So you get all those futures, all that for that one price at 162. It's a great deal. Couldn't recommend it anymore. We got a interesting slate right now, though. Let's talk about some basketball things right now. Sorry if you guys are watching the video, I just have paint like all over me. I've been painting in between doing like bet streams. I'm kind of tired right now, but look, I have all my notes for today. It's a pretty good slate in terms of the volume of games, but not necessarily maybe in the quality of the games. We have a 9-game slate today, and there is one game that has a single-digit spread. Well, now actually there's two, because Denver just went to double overtime and lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves in a heartbreaker, absolute heartbreaker with Russell Westbrook. Honestly, my initial thought when I watched that play was, for those of you that watched it, my initial thought when I watched that play was that it might have been an offensive foul because he kicked out. And they still called it a foul, 3-point foul. What are you going to do? Denver loses. What we did do is, and this is part of the value of joining the Huddle, though, is I was watching this game. I was talking to Brandon Anderson a little bit on the side, and we were like, he was like, how's Jokic not winning MVP? And then we mentioned clutch player, and Brandon was like, yeah, he moved down in clutch player a little bit too. So I looked, and Jim has a great position on Jokic. So we had been, the three of us were talking, and I hadn't had a Jokic position yet on clutch player of the year, and FanDuel had a 9-1. Right. Or not FanDuel. FanDuel was down to plus 230. DraftKings was still hanging a 9-1. So I was like, we got to bet this. So I sent it out to the people. By the time, I actually wind up like getting able to, publish it outside of the group, outside of the Huddle, we're looking at, plus 600. It moved down again to plus 250. Then they locked the market. Now he's plus 200 to win clutch player of the year. He's obviously pushing Jalen Brunson, who is still returning from injury. I'd expect Jokic to sit today. Second game of a back-to-back after a double overtime game. Wouldn't shock me if he sat in this game out against the Spurs. So, and we've kind of seen that line move, and we'll touch on that in a minute. But there is some value there where you're getting these lines early. You're getting like almost the stream of conscious thought process and lines and the bets. And that's really where you're going to find a lot of the value in what I'm able to provide to you. But what a game. What an absolute game. So it was I think it's kind of making up for what looks like it might be like an underwhelming Wednesday slate, which we normally have like a great Wednesday set of games. But we'll start off. We got the Knicks versus the Cavaliers. I'm assuming no Mitchell Robinson. It was a back-to-back for the Knicks. Cat didn't play either in Tuesday's game, so I'm wondering if he's going to sit against the Cavs. Cavs are double-digit favorites. Ty Jerome is out. I'm wondering if the Knicks maybe just punt this one. But Josh Hart, he was interviewed after the game. He said he doesn't know about Cat, probably no Cam, probably no Deuce, probably no Jalen Brunson. So I was a little surprised to see Deuce McBride props out there, but maybe he will touch the court, and that would obviously impact Tyler Kolek. We went back to Tyler Kolek today, and we hit on the over 4.5 assists. I like to buy low on some of these guys sometimes. We weren't on him last game when everybody thought he was going to get that big uptick in minutes, and his line went all the way, like kind of ballooned all the way to 7.5 for the assist department. Part of why I wanted to go back to him, it's interesting because we'll have to see what the lineup is for the Knicks, but it's just something for you guys to consider is that Cat actually takes a pretty decent facilitating role without Jalen Brunson and, without Campaign on the floor. And I figured, well, without Campaign, without Brunson, without McBride, without Cat now, would have to be a little bit more of a facilitator, had another 7 assist game. So just something to keep an eye out for in this Cavaliers game. Additionally, the spot that I'm looking at, though, I like DeAndre Hunter over 12.5 points. He's been over this in 8 of 9 games against the Knicks, just absolutely crushes them. A lot of it has to do with the help defense that the Knicks have. They kind of overhelp a little bit, and they tend to overcommit to some of the primary ball handlers and primary scoring threats. And then they leave guys like DeAndre Hunter open as either a cutter or open along the 3-point line, particularly in the corner. That's something that DeAndre Hunter is excellent at capitalizing on. So I'd be looking at DeAndre Hunter over 12.5 points. I'm kind of hoping it comes down to 11.5, but couple it with the fact that Ty Jerome is out, it's not shocking that this line is there at 12.5. Next, we have the Charlotte Hornets versus the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers are basically 15-point favorites, 14.5 right now. Benedict Mathurin is questionable. Miles Turner is questionable. LaMelo Ball is done for the season. I'm looking at Mark Williams over 14.5 points, maybe PR. Thing is, Indiana is a sieve to centers. They just get massacred by centers. And, they're very thin. Obviously, if they don't have Miles Turner, that impacts them even a little bit more. But Mark Williams should be able to crush this line against Indiana. And it's even with this spread and the fact that I think this should be kind of a blowout for Indiana. At the same time, I think that actually helps a little bit where Charlotte doesn't feel the need to sit Mark Williams. They can let him play, let him kind of build up his resume, see if they want to maybe move him again in the offseason or try to build up some of that value after the Lakers kind of torpedoed it a little bit for saying that he failed his medicals. So I'm curious to see. I do like over 14.5 points, though. I think it's a good spot for Mark Williams. Looking at the Kings versus the Wizards, not really too much to talk about in terms of the injury report for the Kings. They aren't going to have Devin Carter. The big thing is, though, Malik Monk has moved back to the bench. It's impacting his ceiling, I think, in terms of some of his props. I'd also think that it's interesting. I wonder if with a little bit of how the vibes are in Sacramento, because Monk really took a little bit of a lesser deal to stay in Sacramento. It was a little bit of a surprising move. It was a good move for Sacramento. But now he's in the bench unit again. I think it's a role that he's thrived in, but I think that he also played really well as a starter. But because of some of the trades that they've had, because of some of the personnel, now he's back on the bench. And you have to wonder how that impacts them moving forward from the season. After, the trade of De'Aaron Fox, you have to wonder if Sacramento is going to say, hey, we need to regroup. We're going to start moving people around. Let's see who's worth something, who's not worth something. And I think that Monk's value is almost suppressed a little bit because he spent so much time, or he's spending time again on the bench. For Washington, we're looking at no Smart, no Middleton, no Brogdon, no Bey. They're clearly focused on the future. And I think this is a matchup where Sabonis should smash. The one thing I'm interested in is he played the full 12 minutes in the first quarter last game, which I was a little bit surprised about. He doesn't typically do that. It's something I'm kind of keeping my eye out for because I think that it might actually create a little bit of value in his first quarter prop market because it's an atypical rotation for him to play all 12 minutes. I'm trying to look and see if there is maybe a sign. I'm going to go and maybe check some of the press reports or something like that. If that's something that Sacramento is trying to do in some of these games where they think that they're going to blow a team out, they want to get their guys a little bit longer minutes or extended minutes. That could be a good opportunity to maybe capitalize on a first quarter line where he had typically been playing about 9 minutes. Now we're seeing 12. So that's a pretty notable change, at least, especially if you're betting a quarter market. So just something to keep an eye out on for the Kings. Next, we have the Heat versus the Celtics. Kevin Love's out. Duncan Robinson's out. Andrew Wiggins is out. Nikola Jovic is out. For the Celtics, Jaylen Brown continues to be questionable. I mean, Jaylen Brown has been missing these games where he's been listed as questionable. Drew Holiday is questionable. Al Horford is doubtful. Porzingis is questionable. I think this is a spot where we can maybe grab Tatum boards. I was hoping that we would see a 7.5. It doesn't look like we're going to get that. It looks like we're going to be sitting at an 8.5. So I'm recording this pretty late right now. I'm only seeing 8.5s in the market. I'm gonna wait until Wednesday, and see, like, after I wake up, and see how the prop lines shake. If they're all gonna be at 8.5, or if there's gonna maybe be a 7.5 that opens up. I would love a 7.5. I think it's a great spot. I think that it's a good opportunity for him to collect a couple extra rebounds, especially with how Al Horford probably missing, Porzingis maybe missing, Jaylen Brown potentially missing as well. I think this could be a good opportunity for Tatum to go over some of these lines. If we look at the injury report, when he has played these games without Porzingis is not so much the issue, but when he's played without both Porzingis and Horford, he's wound up seeing he's hit this in 50% of his games, so it's not 100% indicative, but at the end of the day, he's really only played one game without Brown, Drew, Horford, and Porzingis. So definitely some opportunity here for Tatum to maybe see a little bit of an expanded role against a Heat team that schematically can give Boston some difficulty, even if Boston should wind up winning this game. Next, we have the Jazz versus the Rockets. Walker Kessler is questionable. Springer is questionable. Sexton's questionable. Lauri Markkanen's out. John Collins is out. I was targeting this spot for Houston. They really don't have a significant injury report at all. They have so many players in their rotation. It does get a little bit dicey on who exactly you want to take advantage of here. One player that I think makes some sense, though, is Jalen Green. Jalen Green is somebody that does tend to play, even in blowouts, he will get like a full third quarter rotation, or so to speak. When they're winning by 15 or more this season, he has, especially lately, he's played at least 10, but he's often seeing the full third quarter in terms of his rotation. So, and that's where he can really rack it up. So I like Jalen Green to go over. I actually like his PRA line. These teams just played the other day, and he had 35 PRA. He's actually hit this line continually against the Utah Jazz. 35, 38. There's a 5 in there. Late last season, he had limited minutes. 49 and 49 PRA. So his PRA line is set at 31.5. I like the over here. I do think it's a good opportunity for Jalen Green to really show out. Utah does not have somebody that can necessarily defend Jalen Green, and I think this is a great spot for him against a Utah Jazz team that is obviously not particularly good, is looking towards the future. And if we look at the Rockets' schedule, I think that they do have a little bit of a look-ahead game against the Oklahoma City Thunder, just in terms of maybe seeing how they could match up, how their things align. But there really isn't any reason to try to limit Jalen Green's minutes a ton here. Their next game isn't until Friday, and then their next game after that isn't until Sunday. So this is a decent rest spot for the Houston Rockets. They're 17.5 point favorites. Not super interested in that, but I do think that Jalen Green can take care of business tonight. And even when the team wins by 15 or more points, he's hit this in out of his last 10 games, or he's hit this in 7 of his last 8 games where the team has won by 15 or more points this season. So he's seeing this in blowouts. He's crushing the number. And when the team wins by 10 or more over his last 10, he's hit this in 7 of his last 10 as well. So plenty of opportunity for Jalen Green in a matchup that the Rockets should cruise. Now we've got one game on the slate. Well, 2, like I said before, 2 games on the slate that are single digit spreads. This game is the Hawks versus the Mavericks. Mavericks are like 3.5, 4-point favorites. It's a back-to-back for the Hawks. Really fun time calling this game for NBA BetStream last night, and really had a blast with it. But the Hawks are on a back-to-back. Tough loss to the Portland Trailblazers. The other thing is they're traveling from Atlanta to Dallas. So it's not like the longest flight, but it is a travel spot for them. So it's a back-to-back with travel. For the Dallas Mavericks, the interesting thing is that Daniel Gafford came back last game. Derek Lively is now questionable. Anthony Davis is probable. So this is a spot now where the Mavs are getting healthy at the right time. They are in the play-in tournament right now. They need to hold off the Suns. They need to hold off the Blazers, who are unlikely to be able to make that final run. But AD, he's still only at about 30 minutes. So it's definitely a little bit of a tougher matchup for him, given the fact that now we have to see how he meshes in with Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively. But it is a good spot. I think it would normally be a good spot against Atlanta. However, given some of the personnel things and the minutes restrictions, I want to avoid that here. The other thing is when we look at the Hawks, it's a back-to-back. They've been playing at a pretty fast pace. One guy that I think we have to look at again is Dyson Daniels. His rebounds line, it's looking like it's at 6.5 again. I know that Dallas could be a tougher matchup in terms of rebounding with all their size if they have Lively, Gafford, and Anthony Davis. However, Dyson Daniels has just been automatic on really what we're looking at is like a 5.5 or a 6.5 rebound line. If it's 5.5, he's hit this in, let's see, 8 of his last 10 games with the 2 misses both at 5. I think you almost have to take it if that's what it is. I'm going to double check and cross reference it right now while we're talking. I think that might just be fetching an old line from the game today against the Portland Trailblazers, but I'm going to be looking for 5.5 or 6.5 rebounds for Dyson Daniels. He's just been automatic on it. His last couple games are 10, 9, 8, and 8 in the rebounds departments. Even though it might be a tougher matchup against Dallas, still a good spot for Dyson Daniels. Turning to the Spurs versus the Nuggets, I think this is an interesting one, right? So the Nuggets played double overtime, and this spread was open and available to bet during the game. This spread was as high as Nuggets minus 15.5. And at the time of this recording, I'm seeing some 8s in the market right now. Nuggets minus 8. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, look, it's a back-to-back. Michael Porter Jr. missed the game against the Timberwolves due to personal reasons. Got to keep an eye out for that. I'm unsure if he's going to be able to play today. And Jamal Murray missed against the Minnesota Timberwolves. So you have to wonder, were they considering maybe trying to sit some guys tonight against the San Antonio Spurs? Now with the back-to-back after double overtime, I think it's highly likely that either Aaron Gordon or Nikola Jokic sits, if not both of them sit. And I think that this is going to be a good spot for Christian Brown. I think that he would play. Jamal Murray should play. Peyton Watson should also play. And when you couple that with the fact that they can maybe steal an extra game for Michael Porter Jr., who is obviously out for the personal reasons, and it does set up for a game that's a little bit more competitive. Now, looking at some of these spreads, and you can kind of take advantage of some of these opportunities where a team is playing a back-to-back and they're going into overtime, or you can see that a game is trending towards overtime or double overtime, whatever it is, by betting against them in the next game. You know that they're going to be on tired legs. You know that they're going to be maybe traveling a little bit later than they thought they were going to. And it's a very, very tough schedule spot. So I'd be looking to fade Denver, but I think the number has already kind of accounted for that. I think the number has already moved. So I would tend to stay off of that. But I do think that there is an opportunity here for Peyton Watson and Jamal Murray to really have a little bit of a bounce back game here for Denver and keep them afloat. I also wanted to touch on, speaking of the rest, I've neglected to say it before, but the Knicks are playing the Cavs. The Knicks are literally the worst team in the league on 0 days rest, them and the Kings, and they are one of the worst when they have a rest disadvantage. So as much as I love the Knicks, I will not be betting them in that game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Next, we have the Pistons versus the Thunder. Cade Cunningham is doubtful. Tobias Harris is probable. For Oklahoma City, I don't think there was anything on their injury report, but let's just double check here real quick so I don't give you guys bad information. Oklahoma City listed, or so is nobody really super impactful. Aaron Wiggins, probably the most impactful. He was ruled out. Ousmane Deng was also ruled out, and they should be set for this spot. It is a matchup where Detroit can play them tough. I do think that with Cade being doubtful, it potentially is another Malik Beasley spot. Looking at, let's see if his props are up. Yeah, so looking at his props, he just scored 27 points last game against Minnesota. So he really had a great game against them without Cade Cunningham. But his points prop is at 15.5. His threes are at 3.5. Both of these are kind of fetching from underdogs, so they're always a little bit wishy-washy. I try to not buy these specifically, but 3.5 threes, I think, would be a good spot for Malik Beasley against an Oklahoma City Thunder team that does tend to allow 3-point opportunities. So while Beasley is a good shooter and he is capable of hitting this line, it still is tough even against Oklahoma City, who does allow a lot of threes just because of the overall defensive prowess that they have. And when these two teams played about like 2 weeks ago, Beasley made 3 threes, but he was just 6 for 11 from the field and 3 of 7 from 3-point range. So a little bit of a downturn for him against Oklahoma City. I would also be considering this might be a spot for Chet. Chet's at 7.5 rebounds here. And I do think that this could be a good opportunity for him. 7.5 is a little bit low. He just had 6 versus Chicago. So I do think this is like a little bit of a bounce back spot for him. He's been playing slightly limited minutes still. He's still in like the 25 range. We're seeing a couple games where he ticks up towards the 30 mark. But I think over 7.5 rebounds is still a good look. He's hit that in 52% of games this season. I like Chet Holmgren to go over 7.5 rebounds against a slightly bigger Detroit Pistons team. So they do have a little bit more size, and we should be able to see a little bit of extra opportunity here. Additionally, looking at the injury report, Detroit is going to be without a couple players. They're going to be without Isaiah Stewart. They're going to be without Marcus Sasser, and they're going to be without Ron Holland. And I think that makes this interesting for Jalen Duren. Duren has had a lot of trouble against Oklahoma City, I think in part because he gets called for a lot of fouls. Now, if he's the only big on the roster and he does get into foul trouble, which he often does, like when these two teams played 2 weeks ago, he picked up 3 turnovers, 3 fouls, and I believe that the 3 fouls, if I'm correct, were a little earlier. But either way, it does become a little bit of a tougher spot for Duren, who is susceptible to fouls and does have this situation where Shea is such a foul merchant. He's always able to get to the line, can kind of put him in foul trouble. That, I think, would help Chet a little bit. At the same time, though, if Duren is able to stay on the floor, it would help him create and generate rebounds. But like I said, only had 5 against them about 2 weeks ago. This could be a better spot maybe for an Asar Thompson, who's a little bit more flexible and can really rebound the basketball well and may be able to match up and align better with what Oklahoma City does from a size perspective without Isaiah Stewart. So just a couple of things to consider, a couple of things to look at right now. And then finally, we have the Pelicans versus the Clippers. The Clippers are 18-point favorites. Pelicans are just missing everybody. They shut down Zion Williamson and CJ McCollum for the season now. They have no Brandon Boston, no Jordan Hawkins for this game. The Clippers are going to be without Amir Coffey. Clippers are going to just kick ass. I am taking James Harden over 7.5 assists. It's a plus 114 right now. Look, I'm obviously concerned about a blowout. I think that it is highly, highly, highly probable. However, it is not probable to the point where I'm super, super concerned about James Harden not being able to hit this line. And the last time they played the Pelicans, he had 17 dimes back about a month ago on March 11th. 17 assists on 20 potentials. I'm not expecting another 17 assist performance, but Harden still is hitting this in 58% of games, and he's averaging what's the average? Averaging 8.6 assists per game. Even if we look at Harden's stats in these blowout type of wins, he's still hitting this in 50% of games. He's close. He's got a lot of games at 6, a lot of games at 7, but nothing below then. So basically, the floor is there for him to get to the 7.5 assist line. I just think that it's an opportunity for Harden to really find some easy dimes for his teammates. Pelicans have been a sieve. I really think that this is going to be a good spot where he can get a lot of pick and roll going to Zubac, and they're going to be able to run this score right up. And Harden's going to obviously be right at the center of that with some of the pick and roll and with some of the ability to set up his teammates. So I like James Harden over 7.5 assists, especially at plus money here. And they have 2 games coming up against the Dallas Mavericks, who are really a team that's trying to chase them in the Western Conference standings. So the Clippers are in 8th. The Mavericks are in 9th. It's unlikely that Dallas would be able to catch them. Dallas would almost have to win out. The Clippers would have to lose out. But It is an important game for both of those teams as the Clippers are trying to climb out of the 8 seed and Dallas is trying to make sure that they secure the ninth seed and are in the play-in tournament. But either way, I like James Harden over 7.5 assists in this game against the New Orleans Pelicans. I wanted to touch on a little bit of late season NBA betting. Right now, we're kind of in the dog days. There's only about a lot of these teams only have like 7 games left or so. And it's definitely a little bit gross here. It's very hard to project some of these rotations. However, it is easy to project motivations. The problem with being able to project motivations is that a lot of times the books kind of know about it too. It's priced into the spreads, especially, and obviously it's also priced into the money line. I do think that there's a difference now where you can say, I'm very confident this team is going to win. I'm not super certain that this team is going to cover because the teams, a lot of times they have motivations where they want to win the game or they even need to win the game. And they're playing a team that needs to lose the game. And when that happens, obviously, it can create a live betting opportunity where if you're later in the game, you can say, all right, well, this team's got to lose, this team's got to win. And we've watched some of these teams pull some funky stuff with the rotations, like Toronto sitting Scotty Barnes down the stretch of a tie game because they're like, well, we don't want to win this game. It doesn't help them. That's not what they want. It doesn't align with their goals. So you can find some opportunities here where you can bet into spots live, or you can feel a little bit more secure about the money line as a heavily juiced money line as opposed to even a spread bet. I don't normally advocate for this type of thing, but I think at this point in the season, certain money line parlays can create value. You also have to understand that the players on the teams are not tanking. The players on the teams are often playing for their livelihood. They're playing for their career. They're playing for minutes that they might have never gotten before, and they're trying to get their next contract. This is their chance in the NBA. Those players are going to play hard. They don't care about anything the franchise wants to do because if they're drafting a higher pick, maybe it's taking their job. So these players, they really want to show that they are worthy of not only a roster spot for this team, but across the NBA. And a lot of times when you're playing teams with players that are desperate, that are fighting, that are trying very, very hard, and you go into a game where you're like, oh, we should take care of business, we should win this game. That's where you become susceptible to getting into trouble with covering the spread. So just something to consider late season in the NBA. It's also a little bit tougher with some of the player props because some of these teams, if they get out to that big lead, you're going to say, well, we're going to sit these guys. On the flip side, if you look at a team like Washington, for example, Washington is not opposed to playing their players extended minutes. They just still want to lose. So if you see a game where the Wizards, because the Wizards are 16-59 and the Jazz are 16-60. So Washington's got to catch up a little bit in the loss column, right? But if Washington gets out to a game where they go down big early, they will leave their guys in. They'll let like Jordan Poole play. They'll let Alex Sarr play, and they'll give them their run that normally you'd look at and go, well, like, why would you play these guys as much trying to lose? Because they're going to lose anyway. They were down by 20 after the first quarter. There's no reason to change the rotation. Just let them play, let them build up their value, let them get some minutes out there, let them pop up some stats, and maybe you can see if you have something between any of these players, any of these combinations. Some of the opportunities here might actually be if you're looking at, say like the Wizards or the Hornets or the Pelicans or the Jazz. If a team gets out to a big lead on them early, then maybe you can say, okay, well, they're more traditional stars, and a lot of these guys aren't stars, but these stars are these talented younger players might actually get more run than if, let's say, Washington got out to a big lead because some of their players are playing well. Those guys might get the kibosh put on them earlier. And then that's when you say, like, all right, well, this, like, how did this happen? How did this guy start off so hot and then get no minutes down the stretch in this game? But in the game before, he was playing 35 minutes. It really has to do with the fact that there's an expected outcome and almost like a known outcome in some of those games as opposed to others. That could create some value where you could bet some overs. So I'm curious to see if maybe there's an angle with betting like in this game against the Wizards that we have here. So it's the Kings versus the Wizards. I'm curious to see if there's a way to maybe bet like Kings first quarter and like Jordan Poole overs, or Kings first quarter and end game and Poole overs. I think that there would probably be a little bit of negative correlation there that might not be booked into the price. definitely something to consider. I'm probably going to experiment with that a little bit today, and I'll send something out in the Dub Club. But just something that I was spitballing and something I was thinking about. All right, so let's turn to pods and recs. For this, I'm going to recommend maybe just getting a little bit of paint and like doing a little bit of work there. Look, I will say I did not want to do it, but at the same time, the paint job looks great. It definitely makes the house look a little bit brighter. A lot of work, but at the same time, it's not the most expensive thing that you can do to make your house look a little bit nicer, look a little bit brighter, freshen it up a little bit. So you could do a little bit of a paint job there. Additionally, I am going to recommend. Ooh, this is a tough one. Yeah, thumbs up here for anybody that's watching the video. But I am going to recommend. It's harder than I thought it was going to be today. I think it must just be because I'm late. Oh, I got a new pillow, and it's one of those ones that's like the ergonomic pillows, and I like it where like the pillow really supports your neck, and then your pillow can like sag into it. So if anybody has some other suggestions, I really do like this one. I think it's pretty good. It's like got a formed fitting spot for my head. I feel like a pumpkin like going into a stand or something like that. But it honestly, I think it's great. It's pretty comfortable. I've been enjoying it, and I think it's helped me with my sleep a little bit. So going to recommend that. And I'm going to recommend additionally, like I moved to this new area. If anybody's over here, if you know me personally and you know where I live, please give me a suggestion on a new tailor because I can't find one over here. It's been absolutely brutal. And I think that having a good tailor is one of the most underrated things you can possibly have. You can buy a suit that's not like the most expensive suit, get it tailored, it looks great on you, and I think and that's really what it is. I think a lot of it has to do like it doesn't matter if you buy like a $5 suit if it doesn't fit you well. Fitting well is the key, and that's the thing that's always the most important. So you really can't do that unless you either get it like made for you at like a custom place, or if you buy something and then you're able to go get it tailored effectively. So just depends on where your budget is, but I always like to tailor things. I feel like you can get a little bit more of a personalized fit, and then you can buy things as you see them, as you want them, as opposed to having to be like tied to a custom type of deal. So really love that. And if anybody knows one over by me, would be sick. Please advise. Finally, guys, you got to join the huddle. Again, deals is all going. There's a link down in the bio for the sale. But definitely hop in and join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, you can always join. If you don't want that deal, you can always join on the regular monthly. Always leave a free trial so you can test it out there as well. But again, this episode is brought to you by our good friends at Rhythm. Rhythm, the #1 AI betting tool in the market. And we've got baseball now. So not only are you getting baseball, but you're getting basketball, you're getting all the sports, you're getting player props, you're getting sides, you're getting totals. It's going to help you on a daily basis. And it's on your desktop and in your phone. You can have it at the touch of your fingers whenever you want to check out not only your thought, but your models and make sure that you are making the best choices for your betting process. So I always appreciate them. And it's going to be, we're the dog days of the NBA season, but no matter what, we're going to head forward and we are going to continue to cash that.